Hey everybody, welcome to the Big Blind, where we bet on startup ecosystems. Today I have a very dear friend of mine. Vaibhav is here with me today, and one of the most driven individuals I'd say that I've met, and very happy to understand how he's been growing. I mean, year on year it's been crazy, the kind of X that they're growing at. But I don't think it will be justice if I introduce him. I'll pass the stage to him.
Yeah.
Vaibhav, could you just introduce yourself?
So, hi, I'm Vaibhav. I'm the founder of Kubar Labs. We are a fintech R&D company. That's how we like to call it. We are particularly solving the problem of loan applications, right? For smaller lenders, you could say like small finance banks, non NBFCs as such, right? Because the way that loan origination happens today in India is it's done by financial consultants, DSAs, loan agencies, all humans, and they have limited capacity and limited outreach. We sort of solve that by bringing a completely AI native infrastructure for sort of originating these loans. So now we can they were previously only able to get you as a bank, let's say 15 to 25 good borrowers every single month. We can get you that in an hour. Right, and we are bringing the volumes by directly partnering with B2B platforms and marketplaces. So that's where we are present, and that's where we start offering our credit facilities, and that's sort of our funnel for sourcing these borrowers. So we have the capacity to serve them as well as sort of redistribution to serve them. That's what we solve.
Okay, so you're building in the fintech space.
Yeah.
And the primary customers that you're working with financial institutions, NBFCs, I believe.
Yeah, NBFCs, urban cooperative banks, small finance banks, even a few banks, but again, we are quite early, so the compliances are not in order yet for the banks.
Okay. So as it stands, Vaibhav, right now, you're a young founder. You're a pretty young founder. Why don't you tell us how did it begin? How did this journey start? When was it the first time, the entrepreneurship bug came into you?
I think it's always been there. I fortunately had a very early start in the decentralized finance space. So I was working at this crypto assets hedge fund back when I had just started college. Although it was quite fun, but ultimately I left it to join a startup. Okay. and that startup was led by Arshia, who is now the head of investments at WTF Fund, like Nikhil Kamat's WTF Fund. So she was my senior in college, and it was quite interesting because I was doing the work that I really wanted. I did it for like a couple of months, and then I was like, what, I have to be a part of startup somehow, right? And that's how SoulSwap, Arshia startup happened. After that, I did take like a year into research. I was only doing research with like my university, with Durham University, chemical laboratory, National Chemical Laboratory and such, because I really wanted to understand what are some really difficult problems to solve. So I've been a big believer that bleeding edge research is the most impactful when you're able to create products out of it that people actually use. Now again, there's a lot of debate about Google and the page rank algorithm, but just like it's a decent analogy to say that hey, that was something that was bleeding edge at that time, which has now come as a revolutionary product. You can say the same about ChatGPT as well. Right? It was a very fundamentally difficult problem to solve, and you needed to be a part of a very specific niche to even know that something like this is going to emerge. Right? If you would have asked any person walking on the street during COVID that do you think something like ChatGPT is going to come, they'd be like, what are you talking about, right? Yeah. So you need to be in these ecosystems. So that is what I did, and then sort of using all of this bleeding as research, right? So I wanted to create products out of it. So started sort of my own agency called VireQ, where I started with consulting. So we used to consult enterprise clients across UK and Singapore on Web3 adoption in general, and then we added a few developers there. We made it a dev shop. We had like around 25 developers, all college students. The model really worked for us because we had them on a contract basis, right? So every time a project would come in, we have sort of revenue sharing here, and the sort of IP value that we provided, right? The exposure to this ecosystem we provided was quite high. So people were willing to pay us the margins, right? Because they wanted heavily regulated, compliant, products that don't break at scale, right? These are enterprises. It just so happened that one of my very dear friends was at ETH Zurich, doing this introduction to blockchain course there, and they got to work with the Zurich Central Bank. So their team there, as the final project, was contributing to the CBDC architecture of Zurich Central Bank, and that's how I also got involved into this. Now I had a very deep curiosity coming from the DeFi world, and then already in institutional adoption, right? So I had already I was not a very bullish person on Ethereum or Monero or any of these things, right? I was obviously a holder of Bitcoin, I think, at that point, right? But yeah, so my primary question to these guys was, what are you going to use it for, right? What are CBDCs going to achieve? And the thing is, also, like, the same thing that they said to me like 3 years back is the same thing I heard from the CEO of RBIH very, very recently, this year itself, was that CBDCs cannot be exchanged with stable coins, right? Because the whole premise is that I don't trust the issuing body. I trust the central bank to be a good issuing body. That's why I have a CBDC. But I don't trust whoever is creating USDT or USDC. So they have to be exchanged with CBDCs only, right? So it's a great way for moving money across borders. So the applications surface in cross-border payments, cross-border settlements, cross-border remittances, cross-border trade financing, which is again a place that we are very active in. And again, at that time also it's quite new, right? Most of these frameworks were just not laid out. So we have been quite instrumental in helping some of these frameworks being laid out, right? I think in India, Finternet was actually quite ahead of its time when in terms of these international frameworks. And yeah, that's where the whole curiosity bit came, that, right, I looked at cross-border trade finance seemed as a very relevant problem to me, because if you look at specifically the emerging markets, right, for example, India has the 5 trillion economy promise. How will that happen? You have to do cross-border trade, right? For cross-border trade, you have to get cross-border financing. Why? Because the more financing you have, the more trade you can do, right? It's just an operational lever that sort of gets unlocked for you. And it also just happens that Indian exporters right now face a lot of problems, because India is not a very advanced financial ecosystem like Singapore, right? So we don't have as many financial products. In that case, for example, if I am an exporter and I have an LC issued by my bank, the person that I'm ideally going to get the best interest rate out of is going to be either in Singapore or in UAE, one of the financial institutions there, right? So, but this asset is not legal tender there, which is where we come in. Okay. We tokenize and make these assets legal tender. So we just make things that were not possible before. And there are less than 10 teams in the world that are even working on this, right? And most of them happen to be ex-Mastercard teams. The reason being that this is very much like ChatGPT. Most people don't know about it. They'll get to know like 5 years from now when all of this has actually come as a whole ecosystem. Yeah.
So very interesting. I mean, you went in depth there, which I can see the passion that you have with respect to this industry. Absolutely crazy. Now, how long has Kubar existed for?
So Kubar has existed, I would say, as a research project, it's been a while. We've been researching for, I'd say, 2 years, right? I was researching part-time personally on this. We made it a proper company last year, right? Which is, I think it was around April or June when we sort of got the first few members to join. Before that was just me. Then I actually came to Bangalore for the Bengaluru Tech Summit, which is how I got my first few design partners. And then I never left Bangalore because of that reason, because I wanted to cooperate with these design partners.
What are you calling the product?
It's called Navdan. Translates to New Wealth.
Okay, interesting. Now, you've been in this space now for a while now. So what do you think has been the journey with respect to getting investors on board or pitching to investors? Have you done it? Has this been part of your journey so far?
Not so much. Now we are actively looking at it, right? Because again, in fintech, right, there's a gestation period, there's a validation, there's design partners, right? So what happened for us is after we got our first design partner back in November, we built an initial proposal around them, which actually got us an award from NIBM, National Institute of Bank Management, which is an RBI think tank, which happened, I think, back in March. That actually got us the credibility to now onboard a lot more lenders, right? Because we also got access to a few other ecosystems that we had been working on. And now we have reached a point that, our product, it went live. We have already helped a small cohort of customers, right? But for next phase, which is, these platform integrations, because see, every single platform we integrate with gets us 200 to 250 borrowers on average. A lot of data about those borrowers needs to be stored, right? And because of the DPDP Act and a lot other the guidelines, we have to have our own physical servers. We also need our own physical compute to run sort of our algorithms, right? We have, for example, our own SLM, in-house SLM that we have built for financial NLP use cases. Yeah.
So, see, with respect to this fintech founder space as well, you told me you shifted to Bangalore after coming here and you saw that this space is perfect for you. Now, what would you say that there's a notion around the investor market as well as the startup market that a lot of these activations are happening in small pools, right? You have a lot of these fintech bros that sit in the same founder house or hacker houses. Now, what are your thoughts on that? Is it right? Is this how the industry is operating right now?
I think that's definitely true, and I think there's some advantages to it as well, right? For example, one of the reasons that we have not reached out to any funds before, and even right now, we only take warm leads. So if someone is coming to us, that's only when we take a call. The reason being that I have not done it, but I've seen around me that cold outreach with VCs in this market does not work, right?
Okay.
Unless you have like something in the market, something like a D2C product which is anyways going viral, then that's a great idea. But usually, if you're like me, who's sitting in, let's say, even if you're in Delhi, the ecosystem there is really good, right? But after Delhi, I spent a few months in West Bengal when I was building like the initial architecture. You don't have that access in West Bengal, right? You have to be somewhere, right? And now that we are here, right? We post about things. That is how we get these investors to get in touch with us. We go to some events, we do product demos. That's how a lot of these investors get in touch with us, right? Because and even if the investors that were reaching out to us previously without knowing a lot about us, the problem was we had to give them a 1 hour, 1.5 hour masterclass, right? And a lot of the times a product like Kubar is just not going to be a part of your fund thesis, right? We need people who are very, very, active in the fintech ecosystem.
Okay.
They understand what they are looking to fund, right? They understand what the essential stacks are, right? For example, if you look at fintech, there's a disbursement or a loan processing stack where kings have already emerged. You have M2P fintech, you have Lender.ai, all sort of a unicorn or about to be unicorn companies. If you look at post disbursement, which comes to debt recovery, debt recollection, what happens after you give the loan? You have people like Riverline that's getting very popular in Bangalore, right? You have a lot of these voice AI agents come there to it. But if you look at the pre-disbursement stack, no player has emerged there yet. So we are trying to be the kings of that stack, right? So people, like, ideally anyone we talk to, we look at their portfolio and like, do they have at least one company in the disbursement or post disbursement stack? Because it's not just the capital you're going to bring me, it's also what partnerships can you bring me, right?
Makes sense.
Yeah.
So you're building for an excellent category. You've identified yourself as one of the players who can emerge as the kings there. But would you say that as a founder, it's been a bit difficult to reach out to the right investors or get attention or spotlight from the right investors? Would it help if there was a community where you would be steered in the right direction, or perhaps a warm introduction to the right VC firm, right angel, right investor? Would that have helped?
No, I think that definitely would have helped, right? Even earlier on, one of the best things that happened for us is I come from Ashoka, and it has a very strong community of investors, right? Because of that InfoEdge affiliation. And we also started at the InfoEdge Center for Entrepreneurship at Kubar there. So that access definitely helped, right? A lot of the times we were making some very, very stupid directional, commitments. But then, sort of our investors connected to us to, let's say, a company in their portfolio, which sort of knocked some sense into us and why you shouldn't do this. Because I'd say a lot of the very big products that are going to come out in the next 3 years at least are going to be in very niche ecosystem where information is not very available. So not just just connecting to VCs for capital, but also getting to know this esoteric information that is just not publicly available. I think that's where communities like the one that you're building, right, that also comes in, right? Because I get access to other founders who are also building in, let's say, similar spaces, and founders who have invested in the same space to give me some sense.
So happy to see that. We love validating the fact that it is required such a platform or a community that kind of brings together the right dots. Because again, you're building for an excellent category, but if you not have the spotlight or the right person is not noticing you, it's going to become an issue. Now, with respect to the general startup ecosystem, you could say, let's move away from finance. I'm sure you interact with a lot of founders. You part of many networking sessions. You have your own cohorts. You're part of many incubations. So, what do you think is the general emotion that is going around with respect to these founders? What is the problem that they're facing you think has been very common?
I think that also ties back a bit into the community part, right? Because again, me being in this very niche field, it's also very difficult for the investors to figure out who are the credible players that are coming in, right? Because again, these are long gestation period bets, right? It's not very obvious. So for example, the recent funds that have reached out to me have been through this whole Bharat Netra initiative that I've been a part of, which is again an international finance corridor set up in Bhubaneswar.
Okay.
So the investors who are affiliated with that is sort of are the ones who are sort of coming to me, and then there are banks that I can partner with. So again, the community helps in that way as well. In terms of talking to other founders, right, I think now that we have gotten very much into the building phase, a lot of that networking has subsided, right? Even like the incubation that we are doing for very particular goals, right? For example, we only work with incubators now who are in the fintech domain and actively have our buyers a part of their program, right? For our buyers will be like NBFC buyers or you know any of these buyers, or they have some sort of a regulatory capture or access. But like even then, right now I get to interact with I'd say like at least 10 founders every week, and I think a lot of people are just lost about what to build, because I think with AI in general and Claude and like Mythos, Fable in particular, you could say the boundaries of creation have been pushed very far beyond, right? I think most people don't even know where the boundaries are at right now. Even I don't know it, right? So there are so many things you could build, right? So that's sort of become a problem now because there's too many choices. That's a problem that people actively face.
So would you say clarity is still a problem, a prominent problem between founders? They're not clear with respect to how to position themselves or what exactly should they be building towards. Would you say that clarity, focus with respect to what is the problem statement and how to make it a little bit more definitive? Is that an issue that is still persistent in your circles, your founder circles?
Yeah. I think I'll just give you one example, right? For example, if you talk about, let's say, Kubar as a product, like Navdan as a product. If we would have just been like, hey, we are going to provide quote unquote credit intelligence, right? Now that would have been very broad, right? Now what happens is, because of being a part of these communities, we got to know what the exact depth of the problem is, and instead of like building a feature, we were able to build a complete package, right? A complete product that is even priced driven on outcome, right? We have outcome based pricing for that particular reason. And I think those are the kind of businesses that are going to take off. I think outcome driven pricing is going to be a really big thing, even though very few people have cracked it till now. And I think that the kind of business that we are in is one that has to be outcome based pricing, like at least the one that Navdan is in. But I think with what communities unlock is, right, a lot of founders that I meet, they're building, let's say, company brain, right? I have a lot of friends who are building company brain. I have a lot of friends who are building voice AI. Now if they had access to a community, right, where they could find out from other members of the community what problems they are facing in their sectors and try to sort of build a whole packaged product that solves one particular problem for a decently sized audience before sort of making it more broad, that would really help. That would have helped us a lot when we started, and I think it would, like with now at least, it would help other people a lot more.
Very interesting insight to how the founders' minds work now. Now, to kind of conclude a bit here, as a 23-year-old founder, what is something that you would want to talk to as a message to these entrepreneurial journeys that are starting now? I'm sure you would have seen this yourself, the kind of hustle culture that's required, of being persistent, of having the right mentors or steering in the right directions. What is the message that you would like to give to others who are starting off?
I think it's a lot about, like, even 5 years back, if I was, for example, when I started Wirecube, I was not the most passionate about what I was doing, right? It was an agency that I started because I knew it's in the crypto space, there's a lot of money in the space. And as soon as the bear market came, the profits declined, I took I sort of walked out of it, right? I think a lot of that cannot happen anymore, right? Because all the low hanging fruits are धीरे disappearing. So I think you have to find something that you're really passionate about, right? When you talk about, these insane work hours, like I'm not a massive believer in working 14 hours every single day, but I do believe in creativity bursts, right? So sometimes our team would just work for 18 hours or do a hackathon for 36 hours, so that's something I really believe. But that also needs to happen, that's also going to happen if you are really passionate about what you're doing, right? So I think because the boundaries of creation have become so far stretched, I think you have to make very, very audacious bets, and you have to be very, very passionate about those bets, because lower hanging fruits dheere dheere are disappearing. When I talk to my team at Kubar, I tell them that there are only sort of two kind of businesses, at least in our sector, that I believe are going to be AI proof. For the next 3 years, it's going to be vertical AI solutions, right? For example, we have looked at the whole loan origination market in India, done by humans, done by agents, and we have applied a vertical AI thesis there. So that works. That works for the next 3 years. But after that, I believe the best AI-proof businesses are going to be something that has a regulatory capture, at least in finance, right? For example, if you talk about the cross-border bit, we have regulatory capture, right? If you talk about it after our latest sort of partnerships and approvals, we are the only company in India that can do international or cross-border financing of electronic bill of ladings, right? There's no one else who can do it. So how do you bring AI to this, right? So that, yeah.
Very powerful insight there, Vaibhav. I mean, coming from somebody who's so active in this space, I think it's something that it's a good takeaway for builders out there who are trying to figure out what's the right problem statement to solve for. And I can very conclusively say that you're one of the most passionate founders we've had on this channel. Thank you so much for being part of Big Blind. It was lovely to host you. So that's
lovely being here. I hope people get some value out of this, and I think I'd like to conclude by saying that now that you can create so much more than you could create 10 years back, I think you have to find the biggest problem that you can solve and you are truly passionate about, and that's pretty much the key to anything.
Absolutely amazing. Thank you so much.